You know, all this train talk is getting me pumped. I have to admit it, I like public transportation. So to hear that a high-speed train is gonna be here and be here soon makes me excited. And would you just look at all this progress, proposals, funding, and best of all, the people are on board. A new train would not just make it so you didn't have to drive on I-25, but it would strengthen the growth of the entire Front Range region. As a person who grew up in this region, this is it. The car-centric sprawl of my hometown has a glimmer of hope. If you remember from the last video, the proposed finish line will be completed, let me see, 2029? That is really soon. What, RTD, reason to drive, what is the ghost train? Oh no, dang it, deja vu. You see, we've been down these tracks before. We already had a train route promising to connect Colorado. When was it supposed to be finished? 2017, oh no. When was it proposed? 2004, oh dang it. How far over budget was it? Billions? Deja vu. So seems to be the fate of all intercity rail projects in America. Things just aren't meant to be. But wait, this new Front Range passenger rail is said to be different. Glimmer of hope. Have things really changed? In this final episode, we will look at the failures of rail projects in the rest of America and, more importantly, failures building the same train that is supposed to be our savior to find out if we really do, in fact, need this train. Look, I'd love it if we could be like the rest of the world, like Europe, like Japan, but we are not them. We are America. We are the Front Range. We have ghosts, skeletons in the closet. And to see what I mean,
we just have to talk about California. It is notorious for the worst rail infrastructure failure in recent memory, the LA to San Francisco high-speed rail line.
Here is a quick review. The California High-Speed Rail Authority was first thought about in 1979, then created later in 1996. Congratulations. Nothing notable happened until 12 years later when a ballot measure for around $10 billion was approved by California voters in 2008. Alright, we have funding. Let's build a train. To track progress, I made a graph that shows the gap between the funding and cost estimates. Down there in the red is the approved $10 billion, and in blue, the around $30 billion needed for completion. And away we go. Okay, not bad. Slightly bigger gap, but that's to be expected with a project like this. Yeah, it's going down. Okay. Wait, where are you going? Where are you going? Dang it. The original estimate has ballooned to well over $100 billion. The original 2017 completion date is now for... Never mind, it does not even exist. Dang it.
Now, this project was such a big failure that the blame can be spread out to numerous different places. It was probably the lobbying by the auto and aviation industry. It was probably the very, very vocal minority landowners that clogged up the land acquisition for construction. But there are plenty of videos out there that go into greater detail. The reason I bring up California is because it is so hard to build new intercity rail projects in America. We are home of the brave, asphalt of the car. Truth is, we've had a near century of chances to improve rail infrastructure, city design, and public support for trains. But we are so addicted to cars that it is clear we don't want them.
Many attempts were made to introduce high-speed rail and more rail options for intercity travel starting in the 60s and 70s with the Amtrak, the Metroliner, and Turbo Train services, but by then, the era of the car had already started.
From the 50s to the 70s, passenger rail travel as measured by passenger miles declined roughly 2/3. Financially, public rail was dying, Amtrak was decaying, and the Metroliner and Turbo Trains slowly disappeared. Cars were taking over.
There were many more attempts throughout the 80s and 90s to implement public rail throughout the United States, especially with the advancements and success of rail in Japan, China, and Europe, but most, outside of major metropolitan areas, proved insignificant.
I want trains. You probably want trains, but America simply does not.
By the odds, America was already feeling the effects of our lack of rail infrastructure. The climate-related consequences of cars and the economic loss of no public intercity travel was being seen.
And there was no better example of this than Denver.
Back in 1989, Denver had a problem. Their football team sucked. This has nothing to do with trains, but after a third Super Bowl loss, a CBS sportscaster commented that Denver had never been #1 in anything other than carbon monoxide. Ouch. From the 60s to the 90s, Denver saw its population grow by over 185%. That meant more cars and much more emissions. It got so bad that the smog earned itself a nickname, the brown cloud. Denver violated air quality standards for up to 200 days a year. No wonder the Broncos couldn't win. Eventually, a new government organization was formed to combat the brown cloud, RTD. And along with it, a new idea, to connect the Denver region and its suburbs along the Front Range with passenger rail.
Sound familiar?
It was called FasTracks. In 2004, a ballot measure was introduced proposing a sales tax for it.
If you vote yes on 4A and the FasTracks plan, it could change the way you start your day.
Sound familiar?
They were trying to sell the Denver region on the idea that passenger rail was the way forward.
So why stay stuck in the past when you can move smoothly into the future?
Was the way to skip traffic, most first and foremost. That was the big selling point.
That was Nathaniel Miner, journalist for Colorado Public Radio specializing in transportation and growth issues, and host of a popular podcast called Ghost Train. In the podcast, Miner goes in depth about the history of Denver's trains and the FasTracks program in general. Back in 2004, the ballot measure passed, and with it, a new promised train system in Denver, which it succeeded in building. It also, however, promised a train from Denver to Boulder and back, a train that Coloradoans voted for, but a train that is still yet to be built.
From 2005 to 2020, FasTracks has cost over $269 million for Boulder County residents. People in the Boulder area don't really feel like it was a success, correct?
When you talk to people anecdotally, I think a lot of people remember voting for it, being promised that it would be complete by 2017. So they're upset for sure. They've been paying taxes for it and it's not on the horizon.
Miner also pointed out that while Boulderites never got the train they were promised, RTD did bring them new bus routes on the Flatiron Flyer bus.
They did get something. For sure.
But regardless of what Boulder got or didn't get, they were rubbed the wrong way by RTD's FasTracks program. RTD's mistakes were more than just not delivering, but under-delivering. Routes throughout Denver were underutilized, especially in the case of park and ride trains. If you have to drive to the train station just for the service to be slower due to its 30-minute stop intervals and regulated speed, what's stopping you from just driving? Because of how RTD implemented the FasTracks program, they garnered the nickname Reason to Drive. For the new Front Range passenger rail, they have to overcome the narrative of the ghost train and RTD's notorious nickname if they expect people to vote on the sales tax they plan for 2026.
A lot of folks in the Boulder, Longmont area have been paying taxes for light rail, and they never received a train. That's probably my biggest concern as a comms person. Why are you different, Front Range passenger rail? How are you different?
We find very much that is our biggest challenge moving forward. We are not starting from square one in our conversations. We're starting from -11, right? We have to overcome this conversation. We are entering into focused conversations over the next 2 to 6 months with the Department of Transportation as well as RTD to talk about exactly this, so that by the end of the year, there is a clear message on how we will deliver rail to the northern portion of this corridor by 2029.
RTD and the Front Range Passenger Rail District Board are planning to work together moving forward. This could be good for RTD so as to help them repair their relationship with the public, and in benefit of the new passenger rail project, there's potential that they could share in the resources that RTD's been collecting over the years from the FasTracks sales tax. But they have to deliver. The Front Range Passenger Rail District Board members are confident that this will not be a repeat of FasTracks. But how confident are the voters?
In the last episode, you watched us leave Denver, heading to Colorado Springs on our way to recreate the proposed route of the new passenger train from Fort Collins to Pueblo. As we arrived, we were reminded of another concern of public transportation: safety. Safety is often forgotten when discussing how great it would be if we had a train. Now, a tram is almost infinitely safer than traveling by car. However, personal safety, relating to comfort, is a huge issue. It's just the truth of it. Some people are going to feel unsafe on public transportation, especially when this form of cheap transportation attracts homeless individuals. The safety of pedestrians would also have to be improved, as the Front Range has been historically designed around cars first, people second. This was especially apparent as we made our final bus transfer. The Colorado Springs South Tejon station is one of the most egregious offenders of comfort and pedestrian safety for commuters. Being the intersection of I-25 and Tejon Street, traffic is immense. There are no benches, there are no bathrooms, and there are homeless encampments flanking either side of the buses. Notably, bus staying pulled out of the station, leaving only Greyhound to be stuck, unable to relocate to the max capacity downtown Colorado Springs station. But we were there. The walkability of this stop is tragic. There really isn't anywhere to go, probably because it is under a highway. This is more of a park and ride issue, but in Colorado, even the public transportation is cars first, people second. And even if trains are safer than cars, this train would pose inherent risks as it made the numerous at-grade crossings. In Florida, the largely successful Brightline train has caused more than 50 deaths since 2022, largely because of poor pedestrian safety and at-grade crossings. Trains are always going to be safer, but the at-grade crossings are simply more dangerous with higher speed frequent trains like the Front Range passenger rail would like to be. If the underpass turned bus stop is any indication, there needs to be an effort for the safety and comfort for all commuters.
If all goes to plan, the passenger rail will serve all major cities along the Front Range. Notably absent from these planned stops are smaller communities along the route. Communities that would pay for the sales tax if approved, but not receive any stops. To learn more, we went to one of these communities and interviewed the mayor of Berthoud, William Karspeck.
For us, we are looked at like a suburb, but we're a unique community, and we still got 9 miles of agriculture out to Longmont, and depends on where you are going to Loveland, there's still some ag there. But our identity is very much independent. Our commuters go to work in Greeley, Fort Collins, Denver, all over the place, so we're not really attached to one bigger city. So when we get called kind of a suburb, it not only rubs us the wrong way, it's just incorrect. I think we really deserve our own stop, especially if we're paying a tax for it.
Now we got the train.
So can you imagine 12 of these throughout the day and us paying for it, but it not stopping?
That'd be upsetting.
We would get something if it stopped, but if nothing,
Just that.
you'd be paying for nothing but noise, you know? And if you were a big employer looking around and it came down to Berthoud or Loveland, maybe we had some available space in Loveland and Longmont did, and it came down to that, what would the big employer be looking at? It'd be looking at more opportunities for their employees, you know, to get around. So if we don't have that opportunity, we're losing out on future economic growth too. So another way to be looking at that is we're not only paying a tax, the citizens, but we're also paying for other people to grow their communities through our economic loss.
The initial plan for the route of the passenger rail includes 9 stops. It would stop at Colorado's 9 largest cities, but pass through smaller ones like Berthoud. To include smaller communities in the project, Karspeck was working with the district board on what he calls the secondary stop program. Since then, Karspeck has stepped down from the board.
Passenger rail, so it hit the big cities. A secondary stop would help out the smaller communities, and it might help out with additional stops for the big cities.
That's on a separate train?
It'd be the same system, same tracks, but a separate train.
Okay.
So one would be going fast, and then one maybe 1 or 2 times or 3 times a day would be going slower and hitting all the other ones.
Gotcha. But Andy Carcian, former Front Range Passenger Rail District Manager, explains that the board will plan to implement this program in the future and will work with bus systems along the route to help connect people to these 9 initial stations. As exemplified by RTD's FasTracks program, rail projects don't always work out as they're promised to. There is some worry that even cities larger than Berthoud could be left out of the project if the sales tax doesn't pass or if any other issue arises. Just like the long-term idea to eventually expand the project beyond Colorado, into Wyoming or New Mexico, there's an idea in time to head west into the mountains. Heather Graham, mayor of Pueblo, is concerned that the train will head there, even before it comes to her town.
Might be a chance that southern Colorado is left out.
You're worried about it stopping at Colorado Springs?
I'm worried about it going from Denver to the ski towns.
Carcian tells us that they do plan to work the northern portion before the southern one, just because the BNSF Railroad Company, which is established north of Denver, will be easier and less expensive to work with than Union Pacific south of Denver. He also explains how, without the sales tax ballot measure passing, the project will be severely limited.
We do not and will not have enough money without a ballot measure to pay for the entire project, north to south. So when we're talking about the transformative passenger rail, front range passenger rail project, it is incumbent that we pass a ballot measure for the success of this project. Otherwise, we are going to be cobbling together a half-ass rail system for the northern portion. That's truly not going to be a benefit that the legislature and the voters truly want.
Nearly a year later, Morgan Treat, who brought the idea of this trip to the rest of the team, reflects on her experience.
The bus trip was a long day. I think what I remember most from that day is just how tired I was. I think if there was a train, obviously it would have gone at higher speeds, maybe would have made fewer stops, and definitely wouldn't have had to change buses.
So based on our bus trip, you would say there is a need for front range passenger rail?
Yes, after riding the current public transportation, I do think that a train would be a really good addition. You can't get rid of buses. Buses complement trains because we've got to get from the train station to wherever we're going. But I think trains would greatly improve the system. I don't know if people are going to vote for this, and I think it's partly because of kind of the burn that people have experienced in the past with some of these proposed train projects not coming to fruition. So we'll see if people can kind of get over that sense of betrayal to vote for something that could possibly, benefit our community if we see it to completion.
Will you vote for it?
I will definitely vote for it, yes.
We've been very critical in this episode. Let's go back to someone who would know best on how this project will turn out, Nathaniel Miner. He sees the Front Range Passenger Rail program as different than other programs that have failed in the past.
There's no reason it can't happen. The tracks are there, the will is there, the money might be there. So there is enough critical mass here that it certainly could happen. I think if you go back the last 30 or 40 years, you can probably find different proposals for front range rail that came and went. I don't know that one has gotten this far in the process before, so that it feels different to me. What I'm hearing from them now is the next 5 to 10 years is possible.
Clearly the next and probably biggest milestone to decide whether or not this project will succeed is the ballot measure planned for 2026. Out of the small group of commuters we interviewed, no one was against it. And as the former general manager of the board said, he hadn't talked to anyone who didn't want this. Whether or not this ballot measure passes, the anger shown by the failed promise of the FasTracks program and the hope people have for this new proposal show how much public transportation means to Coloradoans.
How we move says a lot about how we live. Life in a typical American city in the West, you are almost certainly using a car to get around. You really do need a car to access the city, to access opportunities and recreation, where in different kinds of cities, maybe you don't need a car to have a life. Maybe you can walk or take the train or whatever. It's a story about identity, and there's environmental impacts of it, and air quality and climate and safety and all sorts of things that I think are a lot more interesting than just, stories about road construction. This is so much more than that.
Our original bus trip was planned along the route of the train to find out the currently available public transportation in Colorado. Starting at 6 a.m., we took 4 buses from Fort Collins to Boulder to Denver, Colorado Springs, and now, over 8 hours later, to Pueblo. Our trip did in fact teach us about the current system of buses. We have a pretty good system, and it doesn't have to take you 8 hours to go to Pueblo. You can always get there on a direct bus. But if you want to see the Front Range and the future of this region, all you have to do is take a trip and talk to people. The trip did in fact teach us about the buses, but it taught us more about those who make up the Front Range region, people we wouldn't get to meet while sitting in bumper-to-bumper traffic. I have to admit it, I like public transportation, and the importance of a train seems a little more clear now, especially because we had to travel all the way back. Thank you for watching.
I wish I had known I would open it for you.